Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome back to the WineDown. In today's episode, we're talking about a whole bunch of different topics. Scott and I have been to the CRN Pipeline Conference up here on the sunny Gold Coast, and we're going to take you through some of what I think the industry believe are some of the big industry topics that we should all be thinking about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Welcome to the WineDown, an afternoon podcast where two techie blokes sit down over a bowl of wine and chat about what's happening in the world of tech. Enjoy while Scott and Nick open up about their week in technology.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the WineDown. I'm Nick and this is
Scott.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Good, thank you, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Now it looks sunny out there. Where are we? What are we drinking?
Well, we're on the Gold Coast. As I found in Melbourne and Sydney at the moment, it's raining like nothing else.
Apparently Sydney was okay today, but over the last few days it's been...
Oh, there you go. No, we're on the Gold Coast today. We're actually at an industry event, CRN Pipeline, and it's a big sort of update session from lots of different sources on what's happening, where things are going. How do you get there?
Yeah, it's been fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
So it's the last afternoon. Everybody's gone off to play golf, and we thought we'd sit down and record some wine downs for you.
As you do.
Yes.
As you do. So we're at the lovely Sheraton Mirage.
We are up by SeaWorld here. Up
Yes.
on the
Yes.
sunny Gold Coast.
Wonderful
So,
place.
Scott, what are we drinking?
Oh, so we found a lovely bottle of Wira Catapult, which I actually wasn't that familiar with at the bar here. And I tell you what, it's actually quite a nice Shiraz. It's a McLaren Vale. It's a 2020. And it's quite good. I tell you what, there's this. I was reading the back of the label here. It's quite a funny thing. So the original winemaker, Greg Trott, had all these weird and wonderful ideas, and one of them was to build a medieval siege machine, like a trebuchet,
Okay, yep.
otherwise known as a catapult, to literally send bottles of wine, of fine wine that he produced, across into all the neighbouring vineyards.
Okay.
Now, he's since passed, but they've said, look, we're going to name this particular Shiraz the catapult to honour the dream.
Wow.
Yes. How about that?
But it's quite nice wine. I had a little sip there. I enjoy it.
Well, it's better than I ran into a wine the other day. This is flat, dry red. It's clearly not very imaginative, but
No.
I thought this was quite interesting.
Yes, very nice. Very nice.
It's a nice drop.
Cool. There we are. So you should definitely try that one. It's
Try that one
not
out.
a pub wine. It's quite nice.
No, it's actually quite nice. Look, we do a really good range, the Church Block, which is quite commonly known, but this is a nice offshoot. I don't mind this at all.
So the event we're at now, for those of you who haven't been to an IT industry event, the way these events normally go is there's a bunch of sessions giving you useful content and information. There's the odd session by a sponsor vendor, getting us to buy them stuff and potentially sell it to you. And there's an exhibition hall.
That's right.
Where vendors talk about their wares. But what we're going to focus on today is really some of that guidance and leadership we were being given by the speakers, which I think is really useful to share. I know it's an IT industry event, but the broad macro view of what everyone was talking about, I think, is useful for every business.
Oh, look, absolutely. There was some very good content here. I was quite impressed.
Yep. So the first, we'll do it in order of the agenda. The
Yes.
first thing we addressed was skill shortages.
Oh, skill shortages, not exactly just the odd person here or there.
Yes.
There are massive skill shortages across the IT industry. To some respect, this is a broader industry, a broader issue across other industries as well. But look, especially in the IT industry, it's really hard finding skilled people.
Yeah,
right
and
at the moment.
so we've got this kind of pincer movement of no immigration at the moment, which COVID has caused, plus everybody digitizing, and there hasn't been a higher demand for technology people, and that's meaning good people are really hard to find, and the salaries and the rates are being pushed up dramatically. And then there's competition for roles. So we found in our business that one of our team was approached by a big finance company and offered double what we were paying, and we were paying right in the middle of the industry norm. So.
And it's and look, that's really hard to deal with. It's not I don't think it's a long-term issue, But as per Economics 101, supply and demand, it's those that can, pay or do the appropriate requirements to, keep people attracted are the ones that are going to win. And so it's not just the dollar issue.
It's very interesting when we're unpacking the whole concept of what happens when there's a skill shortage, and suddenly it's the candidates that are driving the conversation. So people are turning around and saying, I want to be able to work from home. I want flexibility in where I live. I don't want to have to be present in the office. I want to work in a way which is all around delivering outcomes rather than delivering hours. And that's been a driver for a while, but now it's really coming to the fore. And legacy businesses which have a demand for bums on seats for a certain amount of time, they're losing people because there's better work options out there. And certainly I know with my team who write software, some of them do way better in the middle of the night than they do during the day. And I really want the output from them. I don't want 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I want the output. I know it gets hard when they're not delivering the output. That's a management issue. But people want flexibility. They don't want to have to live in and near a city. And we've got one of our team members who's moved up the coast so he could buy somewhere, and we work perfectly happily with that. And those things, I think, all businesses need to be aware when it's a candidate's market, they're going to call how they want to work. They'll interview you, not the other way around.
I found it interesting, and we'll get to this a little later on, though. But there's companies now offering NFTs instead of shares as employee share options.
Ah, yes. So that was a conversation. We will get to that a little later on. That staff, you think about how we motivate staff, and it's Australia. It's quite interesting. They have brought in the employee share option schemes, but there's now employee token option schemes coming out.
Ah, yes.
Employees want more.
Yes.
So non-fungible tokens or fungible tokens. We'll talk about all that in a bit. Instead of equity in the business, seems to be more attractive. Primarily, I think, because that's something they can trade, and stock options aren't.
And look, some of this, we will get to this, as some of this near W3 or Web3 content. I mean, I was surprised. I like to think I'm pretty much across, at least at a high level, most things that are going on in the industry, and maybe not know all the specific technical details about that, but I was surprised about the amount I didn't really know.
I was the same. So I know quite a lot about this space. I know what an NFT is. I've written a blockchain. I know all of those things. I still learned tons in that session, and we'll talk about that in a second. We've got to get to the economic outlook first.
Okay, skill shortages though.
Yes.
An interesting statistic was brought up that as far as the IT industry goes, 70% of the industry were born outside of Australia.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that they were still outside of Australia, but may have immigrated here a long time ago. But just the fact that there is that, the industry has grown so much, so large in such a short period of time, that when you look at all the people coming in, going through universities, getting trained, getting roles and various things, that we've got such a diverse set of backgrounds now.
Yeah, well, I think we're struggling as a nation to create a pathway into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think we're very good at creating liberal arts students. I think we're less good at creating science and technology graduates.
I do wonder to what degree the universities are really up to date and up to the
I think it's very hard for them, right?
Yeah.
So it takes so long to get a course all the way through and accredited and approved. The technology's moved. And you're actually better off with people doing things like coding boot camps and stuff like that.
That's just it. We can turn around graduates within 6 months. Yet on the other,
school leavers.
Okay,
6 months.
It's true too. As we have, but like 6 months of hands-on. Here, do this. Here, do this. Now try this. Work on this project a bit under this supervision. Produces quite a good entry-level sort of programmer, for example.
It's creating good outcomes, and they're learning. And we tend to work on the latest and greatest tech.
Yeah.
So that's an attractor. We're not,
which is good.
Writing things in Visual Basic 6.
And look, we would have a hard time attracting talent if we were doing a lot of legacy work.
Yes.
As well, which is actually, it's still needed, which is a difficult part in our industry too.
Oh, it is difficult.
So, yes, not enough people.
Yep.
Wage pressures going up. Conditions, therefore, being very flexible. It does come down to an element of, if if the people just aren't available, you start to look for other ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Automation.
Yes.
How do we get workflows implemented? How do we automate processes in the business?
I think you're really right there. I actually don't think there's a silver bullet to the skill shortage. I think we're going to have to get better at doing more with less.
Yeah, like I've looked at some organisations saying they're taking on more graduates and interns, and they're trying to have their own training programs, and that's great, but that's only one part of the situation. One part of it's fixing what we ultimately saw previously was let's outsource these back office functions to another country where the task can be done at a more cost effective rate. But I think the real benefit is taking that the next step and say, why are we doing this manually with people at all?
Yes.
We should be using people to a better, using their intellectual capability in better ways than doing these manual processes over and over again. Let's automate the manual process to start with.
How many business process offshoring businesses are there?
Oh, BPOs? Oh, it's got to be at least 100 or 200 or 300.
But what you're doing is you're not improving your business.
No.
You're making your labour cheaper. That's fine.
And in fact, you're very clearly defining your process to the point where you can't actually step outside of the process.
Yeah.
And every time a client comes in with, I've got this issue, and it doesn't fit into the right box, too bad. It gets stuck and it just doesn't get resolved. There needs to be that ability to either have that free thought and ability to do things. But you can't do that if you're remotely removed from the business and you know that you've just got to do this particular function.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that was a fascinating chat. There's an issue with skills, and it's in software development, it's in standard IT people, but very much it's in IT security people.
Oh, IT
really
security, yes, absolutely. I do wonder though. I mean, there's a big need to drive that training in the cyber area.
Yep.
More level 1 skills, more level 2 skills. But I just get the feeling that these level 1 skills are going to be the automated thing of the future. If you've got someone looking at a log for something or looking for an event.
That was interesting. A few years ago, I was chatting to Nick Abrahams, who gave us our presentation about Web3.
Yes.
And he'd been over at Stanford University looking at computational law. And computational law is using computers and software to remove what junior people in a law firm do. A lot of what a junior lawyer would do, apparently, and I'm not a lawyer, but is they go and look up precedents and find, cases which will represent, and all of that research, etc. But now the computers can do that. And he was saying the issue they've got is now there's no pathway for juniors in the industry. So how do you get the seniors?
How do they? Yeah, because by doing that research and finding those cases, you're connecting all the dots. And okay, that's interesting. Because that's the same sort of thing when I'm looking at what like level 1 security engineers are doing now. I think, well, come on, we could automate that.
But how do you get your level 2?
That's right. How do you get to level 2 and 3? You can't just go straight there. So no, it's an interesting concept. Okay, so the economy.
Oh, now this was fascinating. Now there was an article that CRN did on me before this event, and I was very negative on the economy. I was absolutely under the impression that we're heading for inflation would increase, interest rates would go up, that would have a negative effect on the housing market. There'd be a slump in the housing market, and it was pretty obvious that Australia was headed into a recession. And if you now look at, and what's interesting, if you actually looked at the numbers at the point I gave that article, I think that's the conclusion you draw from the graphs. However, now we're a couple of weeks along, we've seen some interesting things. We've seen the growth in inflation start to flatten out. There's a belief that interest rates will go up another 1.25 points, 1.5, and then stop, and then come back, because there's a bunch of fundamentals, such as commodity prices, which have come off their big highs. And with that all put together, at least the feedback we were getting from the amazing economists who spoke to us was that really we're not going to head into a big dip. It's all going to kind of calm down over the next couple of years. Now, he also said almost everything he said. He said the hardest thing to do as an economist is predict that
Oh, of
vehicle
course,
that
of
changes
course. But
direction.
that's where the trend seems to be.
Yep.
I tell you what, there was one key thing I learned.
Go on.
There are actually economists out there that have a pulse and can present in a
it's interesting.
a nice
Yeah.
way, an engaging way that sort of makes economics seem like an interesting subject.
Yes, even though it's not.
It was a very good presenter. It was quite surprising.
It was. So I think that's wages are obviously on the way up, and I think until we get the results of the government job summit and they do some things, we're going to see those continue to increase in certain areas.
Yeah, but there is strong business confidence.
Yes.
And
There's strong consumer confidence.
Yes,
as well.
there is, and although we're seeing supply issues and wage increases, unemployment sort of different to where it was, slightly high but dropping back
Well,
down.
they were talking about unemployment. What was fascinating is the number of jobs is higher than the number of people who are unemployed. And obviously you can never fill 100%.
No, but what it does say is that I think there's been a lot of jobs become available from where we had foreign workers come in,
Yes.
and they've gone overseas recently,
Yep.
and those roles have not been able to be filled locally.
Yeah. And the feedback on unemployment is we're at the lowest it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Right? We're basically
Which is dangerous as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that just says it's not so much a bad inflation issue, it's a business growth issue.
Well, it's an economic growth issue.
Yes.
How do you grow your economy if you've got no one to do
Yeah,
more?
okay.
So
Well, that was interesting.
That's where our industry comes in and does some software and automation and cool things like
That's
that.
right, you've got to do with what you got.
Yeah, you do.
And, do
You do.
more with what you got. So,
Yep.
okay.
Oh, now my favourite bit of the whole thing, Web3.
Web3. Oh, I tell you what, this was a bit of mind-blowing in some concept. I knew a lot of this was going on, but not anywhere near this sort of level and the involvement. And
It was so funny. Nick Abrahams went on stage and he said, if you're thinking about doing anything in the technology industry, Web3, blockchain, tokens are going to be enormous in the next 2 years. And I think there was this massive intake of breath in the room when everyone went, you what?
yeah, I know. I did get that feeling from a lot of the people around me. That was the, has he got the right event? Maybe you should be speaking at something down the road, or all these things that are coming out are sort of, we don't really know a lot about this stuff yet. They are driving key bursts in the industry.
There's all these slides came up with all these companies that are doing things. So let's try and unpack for everybody. And there's lots of complexity here. There's lots of new terms. So we'll try and keep it as simple as we can. Why is it called Web3? Let's start there.
Okay.
Web 1 was what we called the read-only web. So when websites first came out, you went and looked at them.
Yes.
And then you looked at others. Web 2, which is kind of where we are today, is the read-write web.
Yeah.
And the read-write web works that way because you can put data in.
You can read the page and you can submit your details.
And you can submit your own content and all of those things.
Okay.
Web 3 gives control back to the user with the ability to make money out of it. So let me explain it. If you go onto something like Facebook or Twitter and you write a post, that post now really belongs to Facebook or Twitter.
Yes, that's in that little fine print thing that everybody clicks I accept on. Yes.
Web 3, you'll be able to submit your content and still retain ownership of it.
Ooh.
So, and not only will you be able to retain ownership of it, but you'll be able to monetize certain things. And there's lots of examples of this, but let me try and give you one I was reading just not more than 5 minutes ago. Right now, when you go to the supermarket to buy your shopping, most people have one of those frequent, like Flybuys cards.
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
those.
Yep.
So what you've given the shop is your credit card details,
That's right.
your name, your address, your date of birth, and
Yes.
all sorts of identifying information. When you go to a club and you're not a member, they scan your driving license. You're giving them a copy of your primary identity document, and they're keeping a copy. Now, do you trust their computer system to do that? It's really interesting. With Web3, you control your information and you choose who can see what when.
Okay.
So, for example, when I go into a club, I'm scanning my driving license to prove to the club that I don't live within that 2 kilometre
Okay.
radius,
The radius, yeah.
and I'm old
yeah.
enough, right? but they should be able to go to a Web3. And Vincent Dominello in the New South Wales government is talking about this right now, using Web3. So it's using the technologies of blockchain and cryptography and all these things to allow them to safely interrogate your data to say, does Scott live more than 2 k's away and is he old enough to come in? And it goes, yep, you don't need to know anymore.
That's right.
The data you need, you've been allowed to have. You don't have all his identity information.
Which sort of addresses one issue and raises another.
Yes.
That addresses the issue. I know I'm not going to have to worry about the club and where they're storing my data and how they're doing it and the fact that they're scanning my driver's license.
Yep.
All I've got to worry about is how secure is the government.
Well, no, because the government's not running this either. It's a zero trust platform. So you're controlling your data.
But
you're encrypting your data.
But I have to put it somewhere.
You do. You are putting it on a blockchain. You're putting it on a public ledger, but only your key can decrypt the bits you want.
Right. Okay.
So what will happen in that scenario is your identity information you'll put on the public ledger. A government body will also sign that, saying it's valid.
Right. Okay.
But it's still your information.
And I can supply my key to the club for use at that point in time.
No, you'll decrypt certain parts of that
Okay.
data using your private key.
Yes.
The club knows it's you because you've done it with your public key.
Yes.
And everything works
Yeah.
cryptographically. So
Okay.
incredibly securely with zero trust. That's kind of fascinating.
We'll see where that heads.
So let's kind of unpack some of those things as well. So Web3 is going to be very different. And I think if you look in the news today, the New South Wales government is looking at replacing a whole heap of things they do with Web3 really quickly. Right?
I suppose once they get the framework in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I'm sitting here going, hold on. This is back to the conversation. Most people in that room in our industry hadn't really thought about Web3. And here's the New South Wales state government about to implement it.
Leading the way.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So what goes into Web3? Well, really, it's a lot around the cryptographic technologies which underlie blockchain, which
Okay.
underlie Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that.
Let's go back a step. And blockchain.
Is a way of providing an immutable, so cannot be changed, ledger of transactions of whatever you
Right.
want.
So it's like a database list, a read-only database.
Yes, but it can't be changed once it's written.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's very good for cryptocurrency because I can say I gave you 5 things and I can write that to the ledger and no one can change it and everybody can prove that happened.
Okay.
Securely. And I won't go into the depth on that. I'll do a long presentation on that. But underlying this is kind of that blockchain world. And you've all have heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these kind of independent cryptocurrencies that are volatile as anything and not working very well. That's, I think, not going to be where most of this lives. If we look at who's building those types of things, it's the Reserve Bank of Australia, it's ANZ Bank, it's JP Morgan.
What we are starting to see, though, are some actual uses for blockchain
Yes.
that perhaps other technologies are not best suited to provide.
Well, here's a great example, is the National Health Record. Right now, that's in a centralised database run by the government. None of us really trust that. Putting this onto a blockchain, so your data's there, it's approved, but only you can unlock which bits you want to when, solves all of those problems.
But I know initially when blockchain came out, it was all this, we could do this, and everybody started using it just because they could, I think.
Yes, and sometimes it really wasn't in the right direction.
And this is the, there's Gartner actually has this hype cycle that says everybody gets on board and does it. Then everybody realizes, this thing actually isn't any better than what we've got. In fact, it could be worse. And the whole hype disappears. And then the new level of technology comes on. Now we understand about it. We can actually go and
So
do
I
things.
think that's certainly happened to cryptocurrencies, but cryptocurrencies are what are called fungible tokens. You cannot distinguish one Bitcoin from another Bitcoin or one half of a Bitcoin from another half of a Bitcoin. There's also another thing called the non-fungible token, and there's a real interesting marketplace in those. There is a marketplace of pixelated apes selling as non-fungible tokens for tens of thousands of dollars.
And in this case, what you're talking about is a bitmap.
Yeah. Yes, this is a JPEG, it's a picture.
It's a picture, a bunch of coloured dots in a box that form a picture.
So everybody goes, well, how's this working? And I think for a lot of people, at least in my generation, you go, I don't know how it's working. It's like baseball cards. You can cryptographically prove that you own the only one of those. And if there's a market to sell it because it's scarce and rare, people will buy and trade it.
So this is a form of art.
It is a form of art, and nobody understands art.
No, it's like if I went and painted a painting somewhere and put it up for sale, and someone says, "Hey, I'll give you $2 probably for that," but it's unique. It's a one-off. It's not a print.
Yeah.
It's an original.
And that's the issue with bitmaps is I can share a bitmap all over the world and you can't prove I had the original. Now with non-fungible tokens you can. But that's kind of the weird side of it. What's not weird is some of the things they're doing. Most major sporting codes now are doing non-fungible tokens where you can buy a picture of your favorite player and they might only do 200 of them. And you're one of 200 people guaranteed who has this. That's an investment that you can trade later, just like buying the signed shirt or the baseball card.
Well, I suppose it's the same sort of thing of making prints of an original painting.
I think one of Nick's great example was red wine.
Oh, I love that one.
So there's he made the point that when you gift fine wine to people, it's really risky. Fine wine has to be stored properly.
It
needs
does.
to be transported properly. So what Penfolds have done is you can buy a non-fungible token which represents a bottle of wine which is in Penfolds cellars. A real numbered bottle of wine, and you can give somebody that token, you can share it, you can trade it, you can do whatever you want, but that token gives you the right to go to Penfolds and get that bottle of wine from them.
And they would actually take care of that properly. They would store it properly. Look, a friend of mine recently came to me and said, "Hey, I found this bottle of Grange under the house from 1981. Just all forgotten about."
Yep.
Then look at this. I said, "What's this worth?" I said, "Well, it depends. If you can sort of verify that it's been stored in appropriate conditions, temperature control, drier environment, it's perhaps it's been addressed certain ways over the years, you may actually get a collector to come along and say this is a pristine example of this sort of wine and how good it is. But if it's been damp under there, if the temperature's been up and down or whatever, it may not actually be any good."
Yep.
And this is the
And
problem.
that's why having an NFT of that bottle would have been so much better.
Yeah, so if the bottle's been stored in a temperature controlled, dedicated wine fridge, professionally managed, and that, then it's actually worth something.
So let's go even further. Let's go to the Metaverse.
Ooh, I love the Metaverse.
So the new web is going to be 3D. And so if you haven't ever played with a VR headset, an Oculus Quest 2 or something like that, go find one because it's a hell of an experience. But it's still a little disjointed, right? There's a bunch of work being done on making that truly immersive. We as humans work in a 3D world. I've done meetings with my team in Horizons Workrooms, which is a thing on the Oculus Quest, where it really feels like the two of you are physically together, even though you can't be. And that tech's getting better and better and better, but it's not there yet. Right? So all of this is coming, but JP Morgan have built an office in the Metaverse. One of the hospitals in Dubai have a full live replica of their entire hospital in the Metaverse, so you can choose if you want to go there. I think it's UAE, I'm not sure it's Dubai, but there's all of this work going on, and it's being done by companies like McDonald's. McDonald's will allow you to go to a McDonald's store in the Metaverse, virtually order your burger and fries, and have it physically delivered to your house, so you minimize your time away.
The concept's great, although I do know that the half-life of a Big Mac is in minutes, not in...
Oh, I don't know. There's all these people who store them for years. It could be
God.
really long. I wouldn't eat it. But there's all of this work's going on, and there's about give you an idea, there's probably 5 or 6 companies in Australia servicing this market. There's 7,600 Microsoft partners. So if you think about it from that point of view, there is a massive skills, experience, and provider gap, and all these companies are doing stuff.
This is we'll say like bleeding edge sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And admittedly, they're large brand names who are saying this looks like it's going to go somewhere. We need to have a position here. We're going to put some dollars aside, invest in this, and take a stake, or make sure we have a presence here. If it takes off, great. We were there and we ran with the thing. If it doesn't, okay, that's all right. We protected our risk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that was kind of day one.
Yeah.
And what I think we should do is we'll wrap that at day one. I think
Yes.
that's enough for people to absorb, and we'll come back and do another wind down on what happened in day two. So that was lots of fun, Scott. I
Yes.
enjoyed unpacking that. And
Thank you, Nick.
thank you so much for watching. If you do like what you see, please leave us a like and subscribe. And leave us a comment if you'd like us to discuss a topic that you think is interesting or we might be able to discuss. But thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.